looked back at me. It had very large, like oval-shaped eyes, kind of like what gray aliens look like, but it had actually a smile from ear to ear, like the biggest smile I've ever seen, because it went right across this creature's face. It had pointed ears, and it also had full clothing. It had shoes, and it had a hat. And this just alarmed me. And if you couldn't feel the energy coming off this, which I'm sure anyone could that was going to have this experience, you'd be kind of freaked out. But because I could feel this love and this just total joy, I wasn't afraid. And I looked just back at this being like, whoa. And he turned around and he walked into the grass behind the tree. And from then on, life has been pretty different, because I've gone on to have a relationship with this various beings of this whole kingdom. So,
can you give us a little more description on this being? Was he like, what complexion? What color
it
eyes?
was night. It was very dark. I've had other experiences with them since, but the initial one, what I understand is that it's a manifest form of what is known as an elf, and or a gnome. For a long time, I thought it was a gnome, but I got the clarification is that elves and gnomes and fairies and nixies and all this stuff is very, they all have their place. They're all very different, and they want to be recognized as that, but there is no separation. So it was more about the energy that came with it than the actual appearance of it. But it was basically this. There are artists that I've looked at since that I was not into before. People like Wendy Froud. There are artists that are depicting these beings, because I was in a bookstore in Olympia when I was leaving ECETI to drop off the rental car, and I found this book, and that was the being, and it was in watercolor, very big eyes. It was the smile. The thing I remember the most is the smile and the pointed ears, and the uniformness of the outfit. And it blew my lid right off, because I had no previous belief or recollection of any of this, and for me it was just a really big shocker. So
what are you saying, that they're spiffy dressers?
Yeah. The elves and fairies always like to look their best.
I thought that was just a human quality. All right.
No, it's not. It's there in other cultures abound throughout the galaxies. There is perhaps much more time for beauty and art, and that it's not something that you need to deny. This is part of this expression, and that the pointed hat phenomenon is real. I've seen barn gnomes since. They do wear. There's a barn gnome over at the where the horses are that Pam works with that I've seen, and it has a pointy hat. And I've inquired about this, and it has something to do with how they tap into 0-point energy. So there's a lot there in folklore and in fairy tales.
So you're saying kind of like the pyramid kind of thing, but except a cone?
Yeah, but we all
a way to focus to get to that energy?
Yeah, because we have, from what I've seen, some of us, we've got chakras and energy centers all throughout our body. We also have several above our head, and then at times, if we so wish, we can expand our energy bodies out really wide. I don't claim to know fully anything or too much about this kingdom, but I've gotten some pretty big downloads about that, and that was one of them. It just helps them hone certain energy.
Yeah.
That's my best way of describing it.
Is there any way that because going back to you being able to detect animals' energies, and I'm assuming plants as well.
Yeah.
Is there any way that we ourselves can learn how to do that, or is that just something that's gifted? Or
no, it's absolutely something that you can nurture and you can bridge the gap back to. I think the reason I said about my previous occupation is because I think that's the reason that this happened, because I I had worked at this job for like 6, 7 seasons on and off, and that it's a very difficult job to describe, but you merge with nature in a way and your body that you never will, I don't think, in any other way. And it's not something that I romanticize or really want to embellish, but there was something in my energy field which they saw, which I think was emanating something that looked like family to them, or that someone that was so close to nature that they felt comfortable enough to bridge the gap.
I think that sounds like the key to me, is somebody who is close enough to the natural world.
But what I've experienced, I think, I mean, people are throwing around the word shaman, shamanic, these different quests. And I think we all have our different way of accessing that. But when it comes, I don't know. All I know is my own experience, and that there was a process that I experienced through the work that I did of planting. Like, I've planted hundreds and thousands of trees by hand and working out and healing that landscape. Sure, it's not a forest, it is a tree farm, but there was a melding or a hollowing out of myself. Because when you're out there, you're doing a repetitive task. You're planting a tree every 7 to 10 seconds sometimes. You get out of the way, and it becomes totally like meditation. You hollow out, and you clear a lot of your stuff through that action. But that at some point, I do believe like there was a merge that happened. And I have a lot of friends that still work in this field. They're just ecstatic beings because they know what their body is, and they know its potential, and that's one aspect of this awakening and of this remembrance. But really, I think this happened because of I was really fresh from that job. I'd only been out of the bush for about a month, so my energy signature to them, because that's how it looks. There are, all these emanations, and they go, "Ooh, who's that?
Yeah.
What's going on here?" And the thing is that they manifested into this density, into the third density, and allowed me to look him in the eyes because they wanted me to see them. And they wanted to begin this conversation and this dialogue with all of us. And a lot of us know in our hearts, we can feel that they're there. And here I am saying today that, yeah, they are. That's my belief, because that's my experience.
I just gotta tell a funny story. Tom knows the story already, but I recently started planting mints in my living room, and they're pretty big. So I started cutting some to make tea. Yeah. And I'm saying thank you and sorry, and I was kind of feeling bad, and then I got to a point where I was like looking for more to cut, and I heard in my mind, that's enough, but with such an attitude that I was like, okay, I'm sorry, and I just like backed off. I put the scissors down and just backed away, and that's actually, for me, that's I would have to say that's my first sober experience with plants. I did have another time back in college when I was under the influence and a plant was complaining the whole night. That's a whole different story.
But it's a very real experience, and it's something good to kind of put in your toolbox of experiences that you can draw on. But I think really, like, as far as bridging the gap back to nature, it does start. I mean, there you are where you are, and a lot of people in their apartments, and I had house plants for years, and I didn't really fully understand why I was creating a jungle in my apartment, and all my friends were kind of like, whoa, you've got a jungle in your apartment. I understand now, but that, that's where it starts, is just the pure intention of wanting to work with plants and the beings that surround them.
Yeah. Have you ever watched The Secret Life of Plants?
Yes, I read the book as a fairly young person. And when I looked back on different experiences, like as far as like as a kid, I was doing all kinds of stuff that were just so indicative of somebody that already had this knowledge. But my ego and my imposed adult self at some point kind of cut that, but it didn't last for long. Thank goodness. So.
Yeah. So let's go into some of the other because that one being is not the other one. You've had contact with several beings.
No, he was, I think, and I do call him a he, mostly based on his shoes. I think he was kind of the ambassador for them. And I mean, there's an area here on the land that this happened, and I visited it regularly in my mind and in person, and it's so funny because I look at that area where this happened and it looks more like a hologram in this version than it did that night. You know, it's super surreal, but I'm very aware of different states and carrying over the awareness in my sleep and, you know, various states that I know that this was a very real experience.
So So most of your, I'm kind of relating on my own experience with other beings and how I experience them. Is that out of the corner of my eye and the shadows or the rustling here and rustling there that kind of tips me off to their physical manifestations. Is that kind of the way that you experience it? The majority.
Yeah, Tom, what I understand is that the nature spirits, well, for myself, are actually the closest to me in frequency. And it's very similar to the idea of when you pass over into another dimension, you leave this body, that what you're thinking of is where you go and where your consciousness is. So kind of think of where you're coming from and what you're related to. That's, you know, what you're going to attract. And I could not myself, because of my ego, make the connection to that. But that I do understand that the rods and the cones and the eyes, you know, looking forward, you know, that really the side of your eyes is what sees into the dimensions. But also that you choose to see what you want to see. You do see with your brain and you don't see with your eyes. And I've seen this myself more and more through personal experience because I didn't think any of this was real. You know, being a rock hound and a tomboy and seeing fairies in New Age rock shops, I was like, no way. Even like 6 months prior, I was in a rock shop in Thunder Bay, Ontario, and picking up these crystals. And I remember looking at these images and not relating to them. I mean, beyond the elf kingdom and the fairies and all of that, they are all related. The fawns, it's vast, it's huge. So, yeah, there's just a lot.
I remember when I was up there, you were telling me a story. I don't remember correctly. Mm-hmm. I believe she was an elf. Very beautiful.
Mm. Yeah. Well, basically what happened, I don't have a way of categorizing or organizing. Perhaps later in my life I'll put together this information. It's only just begun. It's a very long but short odyssey thus far. And that I've had a lot of experiences with humanoid beings that are, they're not like that little guy. They're much more humanoid and they are all female. I've had a lot of experiences with them here and they show me how to do things. I never gardened before here. I was given the opportunity to grow food here, and they were showing me things that I previously did not know through symbols and through feelings and through different applications. But I formed relationships through different modalities to identify their names with mostly feminine guardians of the land here. And they look like about 30-year-old women that are about 4 feet tall. You know, they've got the goddess energy. That's why I say they look about 30, but they're shorter. You know, Paula Harris has, God bless Paula Harris and her work and Mary Rodwell's work, and and these wonderful, wonderful